Right, we begin with some breaking news coming in from Sri Lanka. Hours after President Gotabaya Rajapaksa fled Sri Lanka, Ranil Wickremesinghe has now been appointed as the acting president of Sri Lanka. Once again, Ranil Wickremesinghe, the former Prime Minister, has now been appointed as the acting president of Sri Lanka after Gotabaya Rajapaksa left. This comes after a dramatic turn of events on the streets of Sri Lanka, as we've been reporting. Thousands on the streets protesting. They gathered outside the Prime Minister's office in Colombo after a state of emergency was declared across the island-wide. An island-wide state of emergency was declared across the country following the President's departure to the Maldives. And for more details about what this means, joining us now is our correspondent Dasuni Athora. She joins us from Colombo on the phone lines. Dasuni, thanks so much for joining us. A big news development, of course. Ranil Wickremesinghe takes over as the acting president. What does this mean for the country?
Well, yes, Priyanka, indeed, big developments happening right now. Just a few moments ago, the Speaker of Sri Lanka, Mahinda Apabewardena, did confirm that Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe will now be the acting president of Sri Lanka, and the legal capacity would be Article 37, subsection 1 of the Sri Lankan Constitution, where in the absence of the president, the Prime Minister is set to step up to the role of being a president. Now, we all know that the president has fled the country, and it is confirmed that he has left to the Maldives, but that is not his final destination as well. So that is the latest development in terms of the main protest site, which has now turned out to be the office of the Prime Minister. There is a steady inflow of protesters who continue to walk towards the main entrance. Just over 30 to 40 minutes ago, Priyanka, there was a steady round of tear gas where the protesters were quite literally trapped in the middle, and tear gas was fired from both ends by security officials, which in fact was quite harsh, given that a lot of protesters were suffering following the tear gas attack. And I think you can even hear right now there is ambulances on site, and one just whizzed by. There were some casualties that we did see here. So that is the latest right now, Priyanka.
Right, absolutely. Now that Ranil Wickremesinghe is the acting president, what can he do to firstly manage the situation on ground? As we understand, a state of emergency has been imposed to curb the protests, which are continuing unabated, as you've just mentioned. A steady inflow of people coming into the capital. What lies ahead, especially when it comes to these protests?
Well, pretty much that is still to be seen, Priyanka, because emergency law has been imposed. That is one of the strongest laws here in this country, but the protesters are very defiant. So by how and what means does the acting president now plan on controlling and ensuring the security and the peace of this country is yet to be seen, given that there is absolutely zero regard to the emergency law that has been imposed here.
Saying there's zero regard for the state of emergency that's been imposed. That is obviously a worrying idea in itself. But let's not forget that Wickremesinghe himself was willing to step down as Prime Minister. Now that he's the acting president, will the protests calm down?
I think what is happening right now is the opposite, because like you rightfully said, we did cover and we did know that Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe did sort of issue his intention to resign as well. But now what has happened is he has taken up the role of acting president, which is why these protesters are gathering here, because their sentiment is that they want both the president and the Prime Minister to go. So the news of the Prime Minister taking up the role as acting president is what has sort of triggered these protesters to continue to come to this site.
Have we had any statement from the opposition? Do they have a plan in place to tackle this leadership conundrum that's currently facing Sri Lanka?
As of yet, there is no statement that has been put out by the opposition parties. It is just the statement of the Speaker that has been put out several moments ago, noting that Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe will now be the acting president of Sri Lanka.
Right. Dasuni, you of course have been reporting on this crisis from the word go for us. There was a stifling economic crisis. People were queuing up for hours for essentials such as food, fuel and more. Their jobs were hampered. Their way of life was hampered because of the stifling crisis. And now we're seeing these protests, which are being called a tipping point of this months-long crisis. So what do the people demand as of now? What is it that they're asking for? When will these protests stop?
Yes, as you said, for months on end, I have been speaking to protesters at these protest sites, and they pretty much only have one message, that they want the president to step down. And now that they know the president has stepped down, their sentiment is that they want the prime minister also to step down. But when you ask a majority of them what their next plan is, or who do they think is best fit or suited to take up this role of president, majority of them do not have a clear idea as well as to what lies ahead for Sri Lanka's political future. So it's pretty much a very interesting situation, to say the least, given that the people are protesting for the president and the prime minister to step down, but there seems to be no clear alternative as well. And right now I can see there is another round of tear gas that is being fired at the protesters a few hundred meters away from me as well, Priyanka.
Right, Dasuni, thank you so much for all those on-ground inputs. This, of course, is a developing story, a fast-evolving situation in Sri Lanka. We'll continue to track the latest. Thanks for joining us on WION. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.